When I switched on my phone, when everyone on the plane switched on their phone, they learned what was happening. And I looked at it and I could not believe there had been so many people killed, which was, for me, very reminiscent of the attacks of September 11th, 2001 in the United States. I was actually on a plane returning from Afghanistan, and as is often the case, there was no Wi-Fi working on the plane. So I landed very, very early in the morning, and when I switched on my phone, when everyone on the plane switched on their phone, they learned what was happening. And I looked at it and I could not believe there had been so many people killed. I was stunned. I didn't even know how to think about it. And at that moment, there were people all around me on their phones, and it was very quiet in the plane. I work for the New York Times. The New York Times immediately calls in reinforcements when there's a big event. I mean, I was technically the bureau chief, but there were a lot of other people who had come in from Italy, from Germany, from Belgium, and then ultimately people came from the United States. We were lost as to where this had all come from, which was, for me, very reminiscent of the attacks of September 11th, 2001 in the United States. I think for my French colleagues, it was horrifying in a different way because they had a close relative who was there. It was personal in a very immediate way. Collective trauma was very clear, and in some ways, much as September 11th did in the United States, I think it created a sense of solidarity among people. I remember very quickly people going again to the restaurants and cafes in support, and everyone came with candles shortly after the event. It was extremely moving. I felt that there was a great and deep resilience, and there was also, as is often the case as well, a desire to find a way to guarantee safety, and that was familiar to me as well from what happened after September 11th. Because one of the sad lessons of that, at least for me, was that there is no way to guarantee safety. So it's not really worth spending so much time on. It certainly changed attitudes that were enunciated, that were said aloud about Muslims. Many of them felt terrified. That became one of the areas I covered the most. You know, there was a tendency to think that wearing hijab, looking devout as a Muslim was somehow meant that you approved of terrorism. And of course that's not true at all. I think when your country is struck, whether it's in a war or in a large-scale attack, it does change society's assumptions. I wouldn't want to say that all the changes that we are seeing now in both societies are the result of terrorism. They're not. They're way, way more complicated, and there are many, many factors. But certainly the acceptance of restrictions on all kinds of information, on movement, on explanations by police of terrorism, for instance, it became very accepted, and ordinary people were willing to accept these restrictions because they were afraid. And that was something we saw after September 11th with the Patriot Act, and in France we saw something similar with the state of emergency, which was extended and extended, and that gave the police I believe, the ability, if I'm remembering correctly, to tap phones and all kinds of things that would have been really viewed very negatively. For better or worse, I came overseas just a couple of months before the September 11th attacks. And that attack ended up shaping my career in a way that nothing else has. And I've really not gotten away from covering war in some form since then. And terrorism, it's one face of war. I became really obsessed with trying to understand how people made that leap from misery to violence. And I also really became interested in what it takes for a society to recover. I think I'll die and it'll still be going on, those repercussions. There are signal events that become symbolic for a society.